Have you ever walked into a place and felt completely invisible, not in a philosophical way, not the we're just specks of dust in the universe invisible, but truly invisible, standing there, in flesh and blood, and yet not a single glance, not a single greeting, not a single person acknowledging that you even exist? Marcus Bennett, 46 years old, a black man wearing a dark coat, unpolished shoes, and no name tag or title, stood quietly in the lobby of the CrownVista Midtown Hotel. No one knew that it was his very hands that built this empire. No one knew he designed every hallway, approved every carpet pattern, and scented every room. No one knew he owned it all. And maybe no one cared, because to them he was just another average black man, unremarkable, someone who didn't belong here. No bodyguards flanking him, no designer tie, no CEO glow, just a man walking into a place he once called the pride of the hospitality industry. Marcus stood at the front desk. He didn't speak right away. He waited and observed. A young woman with wavy blonde hair, neatly dressed in uniform, stood behind the counter, but her eyes weren't looking forward. Her name was Ashley Moore, but that wouldn't matter. Until a few minutes later. At that moment she was absorbed in her phone. Her fingers moved like the rhythm of a tired heartbeat. No lift of the head, no professional smile, no concern that someone might be standing right in front of her. Marcus cleared his throat gently. No reaction. He tapped his fingertips on the counter very softly, very politely. She still didn't look up, just tilted her head to shift her posture as if the tapping was merely rain on a window, not worth her attention. In that exact moment, Marcus felt a quiet ache inside. Not from hurt, but from familiarity. He had lived through this since childhood, when his grandmother was kicked out of a cafe for wearing the wrong skin color. He had seen it all through his career, from the skeptical stares in pristine boardrooms to the strained smiles of partners who couldn't imagine someone like him running a luxury service empire. But today things are not like the times before. Today he wasn't just the man being dismissed. Today he was Marcus Bennett, and he came to prove one thing. When you're pushed aside simply because you're different, the strongest response is to show them who truly holds the power. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice low and firm. Ashley Moore lifted her head slowly this time, as if that one movement drained her last ounce of patience. "What?" The word came out not as a greeting or a courtesy, just the lazy sound of someone annoyed by an interruption in her precious free time. Marcus maintained a calm expression. "Marcus Bennett, I have a reservation." Ashley frowned slightly, then gave a thin smile that people wear to mask contempt. She began typing on the keyboard, each keystroke so slow that it could be counted individually. Then she spoke without even looking up. Not seeing you in the system." A cold silence swept across the front desk area. Marcus tilted his head. "You're sure there's no mistake?" Ashley shrugged. "Pretty sure." She buried her face back in her phone like the conversation was over. No effort to double-check, no spelling confirmation, no request for a booking number. And right then, like an invisible slap, Marcus understood. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a system error. It wasn't a technical glitch. She had looked him over head to toe in less than 5 seconds and made her judgment. Not upscale enough. Not worth the welcome. Ashley didn't need a reason to reject him. She had her little power today. She used it to brush off a black man in plain clothes without an entourage and a flashy business card. Marcus nodded, as if he'd just finished reading a familiar old chapter. Then, "Could you check again for me, a little more carefully?" Ashley's gaze slid across his cheek, this time cold and expressionless. "Sure," she muttered, tapping a few more keys half-heartedly, then shook her head again. "Nothing. Sorry, maybe you booked the wrong hotel. That happens a lot." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You mean I'm lost?" Ashley smiled a polished, sarcastic smile trained at cocktail parties where sincerity didn't exist. I'm saying mix-ups are common. No anger, no outburst. Marcus looked at her for a long time, then said gently, "And if I'm not mistaken, if my room was booked here in advance." Ashley shrugged again. Then maybe the system glitched. Marcus gave a soft laugh. Not a joyful one, but the kind of laugh from someone who's seen this too many times and knows exactly when the game is about to end. Because Marcus Bennett hadn't come here empty-handed. He pulled out a second phone, a device no one else in the lobby recognized, that granted direct access to the internal operating system of the entire CrownVista chain. Just a few taps. And reservation Marcus Bennett, status manually deleted action by Ashley Moore, front desk. The screen lit up and the air was thick with silence. Marcus didn't look at the screen, he looked at the name tag on the woman's chest, the name that meant nothing minutes ago. Now it was living proof of an entire discriminatory system rotting from within. He exhaled, softly, very softly, and whispered, "The game begins." Now Ashley. Marcus Bennett took a deep breath, not out of anger, but because it was time to pull back the curtain this entire system had carefully draped itself over itself. He kept his expression calm, like a man who had just discovered something intriguing in an old familiar game. "Ashley," he spoke, his voice light as a late afternoon breeze. "May I ask you something?" The receptionist still had her eyes glued to her phone. "Yes," she replied without lifting her head. Marcus turned his phone, slightly holding the screen up before her. "What happens when an employee deletes a reservation from the system?" Ashley glanced. Her eyes skimmed the line for a few seconds, then froze. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't respond. "It just disappears from the system," she stammered after a long silence. "And who has the authority to do that?" Marcus asked, his gaze as steady as still water. Only front desk staff," she answered this time with a faint tremble. "I mean, like me." Marcus nodded. "Exactly." He slid his finger across the screen and stopped at one particular line. Deleted by Ashley Moore, he tilted his head, lowered his voice, not loud but sharp enough to slice the air like a cold blade. "So, why did you delete my reservation, Ashley?" Ashley opened her mouth. Then I closed it, then opened it again. No words, no excuse, nothing left to cover it up. And for the first time all evening, her eyes left the glow of her phone screen and looked directly into Marcus's. Gone was the dismissive look. Gone was the superior attitude. Only shock remained and a regret that hadn't yet formed. Marcus smiled a smile that held no joy. "Don't deny it," he said, eyes locked on hers. "You know what you did. You know why. And now you know there's no way out." Ashley tried to speak again, but Marcus cut her off, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Be quiet, if you have any sense left." She closed her mouth immediately. So fast, it was almost reflexive. Marcus took a step back. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cause a scene. He didn't summon a manager, because he knew this didn't need shouting to have weight. He tilted his head toward her, his voice low and steady. "Here's what's going to happen, Ashley. You'll find me a proper room and do it immediately." Ashley nodded like a machine. Her fingers began to tremble over the keyboard. Marcus folded his arms and waited. The sound of typing echoed frantic and erratic, like each keystroke was striking at the remnants of her career. "Room," she stammered, "room 1427. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Next to the utility room, facing the dumpsters, near the elevators." She froze. "You think I don't know the layout of this hotel?" Silence. "You think I'm a walk-in guest?" Ashley didn't reply. She couldn't. Marcus bent down and picked up the room key card from her hand, but he didn't put it in his pocket. He looked up, stared deep into her eyes and said, "One last time, this isn't the end. Trust me, it's only the beginning." Room key in hand. Marcus Bennett's name was still not acknowledged as a guest, but that didn't matter anymore. He stepped into the elevator, the mirror inside, reflecting a composed face, eyes as cold as steel. Room 1427, the last room at the end of the hall, next to the machine room beside the waste management system, has a window looking out onto a concrete wall and industrial trash bins. It wasn't Ashley's random choice. It was her final twist of petty arrogance, a silent message, "Here you are, nobody." Marcus let out a dry laugh. Pity for her, he was the one who designed every door lock in this building. The door opened to a faint musty smell, not from a malfunction, but because no one ever stayed long in this room. It was the punishment room, reserved for demanding guests or those who didn't fit the standard. Marcus set down his bag, then opened his laptop. The internal system loaded like a war map. The first line he checked was the staff directory. Name Ashley Moore, position, lead receptionist, tenure. 2 years, 3 months, internal notes. Requires additional training, poor adaptability in multicultural scenarios. The kind of language used to sugarcoat racist behavior. The second guest complaints from the last 6 months. Black guest denied check-in due to missing documents, no detailed log recorded. South Asian couple asked to transfer to another hotel due to no availability, despite rooms still showing as vacant. Complaint filed about subtle discriminatory attitude from a receptionist named Ashley Moore. No follow-up action taken. 3 VIP guests cancelled bookings after experiencing covert insult at the front desk. Marcus read each line slowly. Every word landed like a slap to the dignity he had spent a lifetime building. The third line, internal investigation report, reviewed by David Turner, title manager, CrownVista Midtown note. Spoke with employee privately, no further action required. Case closed. Reason: guest may have misinterpreted due to high expectations. Marcus leaned back in his chair. This wasn't just Ashley's fault. This was passive protection from management, a silent cancer, eating away at the brand disguised as indifference. He wasn't angry. He wasn't panicked. He was just sad. It was sad that he had built an empire only to let the weak run it like their private playground. Sad for the guests who had been quietly disrespected with no one in his company to protect them. He closed the laptop, then stood up. "It's time," he whispered, "for this system to know. I'm still watching." Marcus pulled out his phone. He dialed the hotel's internal line. The receptionist's voice answered, "CrownVista Midtown, this is Emma speaking. How may I assist you?" His voice was deep, clear. "I'd like to speak with David Turner, right now." The CrownVista Midtown branch manager, David Turner, sat in his office, casually flipping through the morning sales report as usual. Outside the window, the sunset spilled across the upscale rooftops of Midtown. Everything was perfectly arranged inside the office, like a polished shell covering negligence. The coffee cup on the desk still steamed when the door burst open without warning. David looked up, and when his eyes met the man standing before him, the color drained from his face as if the blood had been pulled straight from his heart. Mr. Bennett," he blurted out, half standing and half wanting to crawl under the desk. Marcus stepped in, no knock, no invitation. This was his empire's office. He needed no permission. He closed the door behind him so gently. It was more terrifying than a slam. He didn't sit. He leaned against the desk, arms folded, staring at David like one would at a test already marked with a failing grade. "Let's skip the pleasantries, David. We need to talk." David swallowed hard. Yes, of course. What can I do?" You know what just happened in the lobby? What, specifically? Marcus tilted his head, as if examining a reaction under a microscope. A receptionist named Ashley Moore manually deleted a guest's reservation. No reason, no apology, no resolution, and she deliberately placed that guest in the worst room in the hotel. David furrowed his brow. I haven't received any report. Exactly, Marcus cut in, his voice sharper now because you've never received a report. You cancel or ignore anything inconvenient. David flushed. I didn't think things you didn't think. That's the problem. Marcus stood upright and circled the desk slowly. His eyes never left the man, and he was now beginning to sweat. Ashley Moore received over 10 complaints related to racial discrimination in 6 months. And your response, guest misunderstood, needs more training. Training for what? Teaching her how to be human again. David opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marcus slowly sat in the chair across from him. Do you know who I am, David? You're the chairman of the board, founder of CrownVista, Mr. Bennett. Marcus nodded, and I was just treated like garbage by a front desk employee. Not because of a system error, not because of high volume, simply because I was a black man in plain clothes. David lowered his head. I'm truly sorry. I didn't know, exactly. You didn't know, and that's why you're about to lose your job. David looked up, panicked. Wait, Marcus raised a hand, signaling silence. I'm giving you one last chance to do the right thing. You'll walk out there, stand in front of the entire hotel lobby, and fire Ashley Moore. Right. Now. David froze. If you can do that without trembling, I might consider letting you keep your position temporarily. The air in the room thickened. The wall clock ticked like a blade slicing into the silence. After a few seconds, David stood up. Eyes down, shoulders trembling slightly. I understand. Marcus said nothing more. He stood up, opened the door, and said softly, Make it clean. I'm watching. The lobby of CrownVista Midtown remained quiet as always, with the scent of luxury candles, soft piano music in the background, and the gentle roll of suitcase wheels over polished marble floors. Ashley Moore stood behind the front desk, pretending to focus on her computer screen, though her mind was tangled like thread. Her face no longer carried arrogance, but she still held her posture, adjusted her hair, and behaved as if nothing had happened. Because deep down, she believed things would return to normal, that man would disappear just like other difficult guests. And she, like every time, would be protected by David Turner. But today was not like every time. The office door swung open. David Turner walked out, pale-faced, fists clenched, but not slowing his stride. He headed straight for the desk, eyes unwavering. The entire lobby sensed something approaching. Staff members froze, and guests in the waiting area began to raise their heads. Ashley Moore, David called out. She looked up quickly, switching back to her professional demeanor. Yes, Mr. Turner. He stopped in front of the desk. Eyes locked, voice heavy. You are fired. Effective immediately. The entire lobby fell silent. The sound of rolling luggage ceased completely. A few guests covered their mouths. A few others smiled subtly as if justice had just walked into the room. Ashley froze. She let out a weak laugh, disbelieving what she'd heard. I'm sorry. What David spoke more clearly. Was I not clear? You are terminated for gross misconduct, deleting a reservation, discriminatory treatment, concealing complaints, and an unacceptable attitude toward guests. Her face turned pale. No, that's not true. I didn't mean to. Maybe the system glitched or everything has been logged. There's clear evidence. And David lowered his voice. The guest you denied service to was Marcus Bennett himself. At that moment, Ashley's face shattered. Marcus, who a young staffer nearby gasped. Marcus Bennett, the founder of CrownVista. The entire front desk froze solid. Ashley backed away, as if shoved into a nightmare she didn't know she'd created. No, no way, he was just a regular guest. An elderly guest from the lounge stood up and whispered to his companion, "She just insulted the man who owns this whole hotel." David pointed coldly. "Pack up your things. Leave the lobby, immediately." Ashley didn't cry. She screamed, "You don't understand. I've worked here for over 2 years. I didn't mean to. I need this job," but no one stood up for her. A few other employees lowered their heads. A black guest seated in the lobby nodded quietly and satisfied. Ashley turned around, eyes blazing. And right then, she saw Marcus Bennett standing at the far corner, leaning gently against a column, arms folded, smiling. Not smug, just calm, the smile of a man who had waited too long for this moment. Ashley shouted, "Why? Why didn't you say who you were from the beginning?" Marcus walked forward. Slowly, each step pressed down on her arrogance with years of being dismissed. He stopped an arm's length away, looked her in the eye and said quietly, "If I have to tell you who I am to be respected, then I was never truly respected." She stood frozen. A tear fell not from remorse, but all the power she thought she had just been stripped away. Marcus tilted his head. "Now go. And remember, next time you judge someone by their skin color, make sure they don't own the building you're standing in." Ashley turned, walked away in silence. No more confident heel clicks. Only the lonely figure fading beneath the chandelier lights, a living symbol of a career collapsed. The lobby of CrownVista Midtown was no longer a place for luxurious check-ins. It had become a silent stage for a public lesson in dignity and the limits of arrogance. Once the proud front desk receptionist, Ashley Moore, had just been fired in front of every staff member and hotel guest. Her face had barely vanished through the revolving glass doors before every eye in the lobby shifted toward the black man in a simple coat standing quietly near the counter. No one asked. No one spoke. But in every mind present, one name had just thundered into clarity: Marcus Bennett. A young staff member stepped hesitantly to the desk, swallowing hard. "Excuse me, are you Marcus Bennett, sir?" Marcus stepped forward one pace. He looked around at every person, not coldly or arrogantly, but with a presence so grounded that it shifted the gravity in the room. "Yes," he said. No applause, no forced clapping like at a staged corporate event. Only stunned, wide-eyed faces and lowered gazes. A middle-aged woman placed her hand over her chest and whispered, "I just disrespected the founder of this hotel chain." Another staff member stammered, I thought you were just a regular guest." Marcus nodded slightly. "That's exactly why I came without notice. I didn't want to see CrownVista through reports. I wanted to feel it as an ordinary person would." He stepped to the front desk and picked up the internal phone. Every staff member held their breath. "This is Marcus Bennett," he said. "I am ordering the immediate closure of the Midtown branch for a full internal audit. All current reservations will be compensated and upgraded. All customer complaints from the past 6 months will be reviewed line by line. And every staff member from top to bottom will be re-evaluated. If they do not meet the standard, they will go. No exceptions." He hung up. Not a single voice responded. Once alive with foreign languages, rolling luggage and forced employee smiles, the lobby now stood silent as a chapel. Marcus turned around, addressing them all. "I didn't build CrownVista to be a place where people judge others based on their skin clothes or whether they came with the company. I built it so that every person, regardless of background, would be received with respect." A young woman behind the service counter gave a slight nod. Her voice trembled. "And if you hadn't come today, would this have just continued?" Marcus looked straight at her, not with anger, but with a gaze heavy as stone. "If I hadn't come today." Then tomorrow, a black child might walk in here holding his father's room key and be told he doesn't belong. I won't let that happen. Not in a place that bears my name. He turned and left the lobby behind like a frozen painting. People still stood there, but none were the same as they had been a few minutes before. From today forward, every glance, smile, and greeting at CrownVista must be seen differently. The door to room 1427 closed behind Marcus. Outside, the hotel had fallen into an unnatural silence, as if the entire building held its breath after an earthquake. He sat at the desk and placed his laptop in front of him. No need for a tailored suit or a shiny nameplate, just a keyboard. And the truth. The screen lit up. The internal dashboard of the CrownVista system opened like a battlefield map, waiting for its commander to return. First things first, Marcus whispered. Clean up what should have been cleaned up long ago. 1. Ashley Moore, permanently blacklisted. Status terminated. Internal review, severe violation of professional ethics, intentional racial discrimination. Itas action added to system-wide no rehire block list. No CrownVista branch permitted to rehire. Order digitally signed. Irrevocable. 2. David Turner under probation review. Position manager, Midtown branch. File covered up complaints, neglected front desk oversight, and failed to report correctly. Note, granted temporary leniency for carrying out public disciplinary action, but must undergo re-evaluation of management capability within 7 days. He'll have one chance and only one. If he doesn't change, he's gone 2, 3. Reopen all previously dismissed customer complaints. Marcus pulled up the list of customer feedback that had been closed after just a few lines. Sample excerpts from guests. I was denied check-in for no availability, but the white guest behind me was accepted. When I raised an issue with the receptionist's attitude, the manager told me I was too sensitive. I wasn't offered a welcome drink or even greeted while the guest behind me received smiles and personal service. Marcus's actions. Each customer would be contacted personally. They would receive full refunds and free VIP membership upgrades. They'd receive an email titled, "We listened late, but we'll never forget again." 4. Emergency system-wide audit issued. Marcus opened the corporate-level admin tab. He sent out a directive titled, System-wide Audit on Implicit Racial Discrimination. Contents. All CrownVista branches worldwide must submit detailed reports on discrimination-related complaints, response processes and timeframes, names of involved staff and outcomes. Deadline 72 hours. Any branch that fails to comply will be temporarily shut down. Marcus leaned back in his chair. His eyes were no longer angry, just resolute. He took a sip of cold tea, then exhaled not out of exhaustion, but because what he had uncovered wasn't merely a lapse in protocol. He had pulled back the dusty cover on a room everyone walked into, but no one dared switch on the light. No one talked about race in shareholder meetings. No one typed discrimination into a service report. But it was there, in every unreturned glance, in every silent deletion of a reservation, in every sigh when an unfit guest walked through the door. And today, the lights had been turned on. There was a knock at the door. 3 gentle, hesitant taps. Marcus Bennett knew who was on the other side before the door opened. He sat motionless, laptop still glowing, displaying a list of employees and branches across the screen. "Come in," he said without looking up. The door opened. David Turner, manager of CrownVista Midtown, stepped inside, his face unable to hide the shame. His eyes were sunken and his tie hung loose. "Mr. Bennett," he said softly, I want to speak with you one more time." Marcus folded his arms, leaned back in his chair and nodded. "I'm listening." David stood there unsure of where to place his hands. He was no longer the confident manager in a tailored suit. Now he was standing on the edge between being kept and erased from history. "I truly didn't know it was this serious," he began. Marcus interrupted not harshly but with precision, like a scalpel. "You didn't know, or you didn't want to know." David said nothing. Marcus stood up. He walked to the window, looking out over the city as lights began to flicker on. "Do you know what it feels like," he said, "for a man to step into the very place he built and be treated like he didn't belong? Not because of a system glitch, but because of the color of his skin." David lowered his head. I'm sorry." Marcus turned to face him. His voice wasn't loud, but it stretched the room tight like a wire. "I don't need an apology. I need action. And for months you chose to stand still. How many complaints did you receive? 10, 20? And what did you do? Closed the cases, deleted the emails, labeled them overly sensitive guests." David clenched his fists, trying to stay composed. "At the time, if I avoided confrontation, it would all just blow over." Marcus nodded slightly. "Avoiding confrontation is exactly how toxic things grow unchecked. That receptionist didn't become discriminatory overnight. She repeated those behaviors, and you stood by in silence." Silence. Then Marcus asked one final time, "So tell me, David, why should I let you stay?" David took a deep breath. For the first time, he didn't deflect. He didn't defend. He just spoke the truth. "Because I was wrong. Because I let fear and convenience take the place of responsibility. And if you give me a chance, I can't promise perfection. But I will do what's right even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means confrontation." Marcus looked at him for a long time. "I don't need you to do what's right when it's easy. I need you to do what's right when everyone else looks away." David nodded. "I understand." Marcus stepped closer. He placed a hand on David's shoulder, not gripping, just a touch, like a final confirmation note. "I'm giving you 7 days. 1 week to change how your staff treats people. 1 week to clean out what should have been thrown away long ago. And 1 week to prove to yourself that you're still worthy of trust." David's voice broke. "Thank you." Marcus tilted his head. "Don't thank me. Thank the guests who spoke up, even when they knew no one would listen." David turned and left the room. Marcus returned to his desk and typed a short command. Moments later, the system sent out an update. "Midtown branch under special supervision. Acting manager David Turner. Status reform evaluation pending." He sat down again, not to rest but to continue. Because CrownVista would no longer be an empire beautiful on the outside. It would become a place worthy of every guest ever silently turned away. The next morning, a veil of sunlight slipped through the window of room 1427, brushing the white wall, which the hotel had long neglected. Marcus Bennett stood in front of the mirror. He was no longer the invisible man who had entered the night before, nor the CEO cloaked in power. He was a 46-year-old black man who had reclaimed dignity for hundreds of others who had once been treated as he had been last night. He wore a dark button-up shirt, simple khaki pants, and no company insignia. Just a worn watch, a gift from his mother when he was accepted into business school more than 20 years ago. On the table was his closed laptop. Beside it, a folder stamped with Midtown, mandatory restructuring. Begins today. And next to that, a small framed photo. An old picture of Marcus on the day CrownVista's first branch opened. In it, he stood in front of the lobby entrance, younger, eager. Behind him, a sign bearing a handwritten slogan, "There are no second-class guests in a place built on trust." Marcus stared at the photo for a long moment. Then he smiled. There was a gentle knock at the door. He opened it. Emma, the young receptionist, had taken over the night shift after Ashley. No name tag, no clipboard, just a young woman holding 2 cups of hot coffee, hands trembling slightly. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Just thank you for coming back. Marcus took the cup. He smiled. I didn't come back. I never left. Yesterday, I returned as a guest to see if Crown Vista had forgotten who truly matters. Emma nodded. Her eyes are slightly red. I won't forget this. Marcus looked at her, then gently placed his hand on the front desk, the place that had been a stage for arrogance the night before. Today he gave it a new purpose, restoration. He turned and walked away from the lobby. No photos were taken, no videos went viral, no headlines were written. Just a strange, quiet shift spreading through the building. Awareness, caution, respect is finally understood not as an obligation, but as a condition for existence. And in the moment Marcus passed through the revolving door, a guest, a middle-aged black man who had just checked in, was greeted by the front desk with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Crown Vista, sir." The guest paused for a beat, gave a slight nod. He didn't know what had happened the night before, but he could feel it. Something had changed.